Thank you for staying with us. This week's decision by South Africa to refer Israel to the International Criminal Court to investigate possible war crimes in Gaza has prompted debates locally and abroad. Pretoria has joined Bolivia, Venezuela and the Comoros, Djibouti, as well as Bangladesh on a similar stance. For more on this conversation, we're now joined by Advocate Andries Moekoa, a legal researcher at Geopolitical Intelligence. Advocate, good to have you on the program this afternoon. Now, as a legal researcher, could you share your insights on South Africa's decision to refer Israel to the ICC for these alleged war crimes? How might this move impact diplomatic relations between the two nations?
Well, good evening to you and your viewers. Well, I think it's a very welcome move by the South African government, especially when it comes to the most serious crimes of concern to the international community. And I think when the country exercises its national interest, I think it's a positive and welcome move. However, it must be expected that Israel will not take kindly to the decision of South Africa.
Yeah.
And obviously, we've had already statements in relation to the motion in Parliament to do away with embassies of Israel in South Africa. At the end of the day, I think the preamble of the Rome Statute puts it very succinctly in that it is adamant that the most serious crimes of international concern must not go unpunished. And if there are going to be diplomatic spats as a result of South African government ensuring that this is done, then I think it is okay. It is okay. But it is good for the international community that we can ensure accountability for violations of war crimes and crimes against humanity and related ones.
Now, considering the differing opinions within South African political parties, particularly the EFF, who are proposing to close the Israeli embassy, and the ANC also endorsing this motion, what legal implications could arise from such a parliamentary decision? And how might it influence South Africa's role in international conflict resolution?
Well, perhaps it might, because South Africa, for example, if it chooses not to be neutral in a particular situation, obviously then it compromises in part its ability to be a mediator in such a situation. But obviously, at the end of the day, domestically, various political organizations have various interests that they are serving and various objectives that they are pursuing. And many of them also are allowed to differ. We are allowed to differ on various dynamics. And the same difference is there between countries at a global scale. And these contestations are necessary for us as a country to have these debates. And it's important for us as countries that when we debate, we are able to then get better clarity on what the law or the legal position is as it relates to, for example, violations of what we call international humanitarian law. So for me, from my perspective, I believe that the international community who are interested in ensuring that war crimes do not go unpunished must support the call of South Africa in relation to this issue, but not just for Israel and Gaza situation, for every other situation where similar crimes and atrocities are committed, such as, for example, Russia and Ukraine. For example, other conflicts around the continent where similar war crimes are being committed. So it is something that is notable and noteworthy for the country to pursue, especially in line with its constitutional objectives, but also because the country is a state party, for example, to the Rome Statute. But also we must never forget that even at home, we have, for example, the implementation of the Rome Statute Act, and it also gives a responsibility for South Africa to take action when such atrocities are committed. So in my view, the political differences are welcome. Let us engage as a country. But at the end of the day, the political sentiments and emotions are not the question that we have to be talking about today. The question is simply this: what is the law today? And is the South African government on the right side as far as the law is concerned? And I believe that the position is essentially a positive one in ensuring that the law is implemented even at the highest level of the ICC.
Advocate Moekoa, there have been accusations of double standards regarding South Africa's views on the International Criminal Court. How do you see South Africa's current stance aligning with its past responses to ICC requests, such as the case involving the Russian President Vladimir Putin and also the failure to arrest Sudanese President Omar al-Bashir in 2015?
Thank you very much. I think one thing that's very clear that we must get as South Africans is that the government has a responsibility to carry out its national interests, to pursue those national interests. And governments change every now and then, and they can inherently choose a different policy or decide to go different directions. So if the previous government, when still I think at that time we had President Jacob Zuma in charge when the Sudanese president was in the country, and they made a decision that, for example, he's not going to be arrested. And that was a government working in pursuit of its national interest at the time. The government have since changed. It might still be the same political party,
right,
but it's a different grouping of people that are leading the government today under President Cyril Ramaphosa. And I believe that he followed the law, and we did not see the president of Russia landing in the republic. And that shows that the government of today is actually interested in complying with the law. But these contradictions are not just a South African problem. They are global challenges. For example, when we look at the UN Security Council members that are there, we know that in this situation, if the UN Security Council is called upon to make a determination as to holding Israel accountable for war crimes, a veto power would be exercised by America and the uncles that are part of the UN Security Council in vetoing the decision to hold Israel accountable. And these are not new contradictions. So for me, there's nothing strange that's happening, and the South African government must be allowed to reflect what are the intentions and wishes of the international community, which are clearly outlined, to ensure that the most serious crimes of concern to the international community do not go unpunished.
Before I let you go, Advocate Moekoa, I want us to take a step backward. And with the EFF proposing to close the Israeli embassy and the ANC endorsing this motion, there are concerns raised by some political analysts as well. From a legal perspective, what potential consequences or even benefits could South Africa face if it decides to cut diplomatic ties with Israel?
Well, currently, remember, in the international space, countries are free to have relations with whomever they want. Obviously, then, when there are contradictions with your friend, then, normally there's this saying that there are no permanent enemies and there are no permanent friends. So, for me, there are no real legal ramifications that are of concern in the short term, in as far as countries deciding to have relations or not to have relations. Safe to say now, that is at a governmental level. But we must always try by all means as a country to have relations with other nations and to find time to even negotiate and deal with very sensitive topics, such as the one that we are dealing with today.
Thank you very much for your time. That's Advocate Andries Moekoa, who's a legal researcher at the Geopolitical Intelligence